All right, kids, this segment brought to you by Albuquerque Arts and Entertainment Magazine, everybody. New Mexico's only magazine dedicated to arts and culture. It's available online and all around the city and in Santa Fe. We're going to find free publications. And today, Erin?
And today, ABQ Arts is bringing us a great comedian. Jennifer Jasper is here on the show today, and she's going to show a little bit of her comedy skills today, share a little bit of it. So, Jennifer, yeah, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah. So you do, not only are you a comedian, you're a storyteller, performer, and a director.
Yep, I graduated from UNM, so I'm an alumni there.
Lobos.
Yeah, yep, go Lobos. And I graduated back in '87 or so in directing, but also was with an improvisational group, Phantasmagoria, here, like back in the '80s.
Oh, wow.
And we moved en masse to Seattle and continued to work for another 5 years.
Wow.
So been performing and directing both over the last 25 or so years up there.
What led you to comedy?
The comedy, I've always loved it. I grew up like memorizing Steve Martin and really loving it. So I've always done a little bit of stand-up, but I really like the free form of improvisation. So I've always been, and then I'm a good storyteller. So that's kind of how I'm now coming into my own form of, which takes a little bit of the comedy, stand-up comedy into storytelling and improvisation. So I work improvisationally.
Oh, okay.
So
Very
my
interesting.
show is not necessarily scripted. I know what I'm going to talk about, but it can change depending on the reaction from the audience, and I'm always constantly working on it.
Yeah. So would you describe it more of just a comedy show, or is it just a mix of everything?
It's a one woman, it's an autobiographical romp through my childhood in Santa Fe.
Nice.
So it's all about my family and growing up in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
So that is, and this actually is this is part of a 60-second evening in Seattle that a theater does, and so I did my show in 60 seconds.
Oh, okay.
And that's what that's from.
That's a great shot of you yelling at
60
somebody.
seconds. It was a furious run-through of a 90-minute show. Yeah.
And you mentioned your childhood, so you grew up in Santa Fe.
I grew up in Santa Fe and then went to UNM.
Okay.
Yeah, born and raised.
Nice.
Well, would you like to do your thing?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
and my
good.
whole family, this will give them a preview because they're all coming to Santa Fe to see
good.
it. So.
All right, well,
Yeah,
Jennifer,
we'll see.
get up and do your
All right.
stuff.
So this is just an excerpt of one of the stories that I talk about. I did not speak until I was 3. And when I did begin speaking, it was in complete sentences, but you couldn't understand a word I said. I couldn't say half the alphabet. Couldn't say C's, G's, H's, J's, L's, W's, R's, S's, T's, Z's, or any combination of any of those letters. So, which wasn't a big deal with my family and friends. They could understand what I was saying. I would substitute letters for other letters, and no big deal. So my parents didn't think it was anything impossible to send me on a plane to go visit my grandparents in Las Vegas, Nevada, by myself when I was 8. So they put me on a plane, and I was just very excited because I got to go visit Las Vegas, Nevada, which I loved my grandparents. And to this day, like, air conditioning is what I smell when I see them. When I go into I'm like, oh, Grandma and Geepa's house, air conditioning, or slot machines, or a taint of cigarette smoke in the air. It just takes me back to my childhood. But what I really loved is I'm the middle of 5 girls, and my 2 oldest sisters would go visit them together, and my 2 youngest sisters would go visit them together. But because I was the middle child, my grandmother took pity on me, and I got to go by myself, which meant every 3rd summer for 2 weeks, I got to be an only child, which was really my special dream. And so I was just very excited to be able to go to Vegas. And so when my mother looked at me and said, okay, Jennifer, you're going to get on that plane, and that plane's going to take off. And then that plane's going to land, and you're going to get off that plane. And then you're going to get on another plane, and that plane's going to take off. And when you get off that plane, then you'll see Grandma and Geepa. I was 8. Okay, so I got on that plane, and the plane took off, and I sat down with my special ginger ale, which was kind of like the fancy soda. You really only got it twice You got to drink it on the plane, or if you were vomiting. So that was like what you got to have. And so I sat down with my special soda and fiddled with the ashtray on the arm and smelled the cigarette smoke wafting up from the smoking section and thought to myself, I'm going to smoke when I'm 15. And got off that plane and walked down the stairs and into a building, and that plane took off, and there were no other planes. And if you want to know where I landed, you'll have to come see my show.
All right.
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, there we go.
Very good combination of comedy and storytelling. I like how you did that. All right, speaking of the show,
Yeah.
let's talk about
So
it.
you can come see it. I'm doing 2 nights in Santa Fe. That's Thursday and Friday night at Teatro Paragus. And you can call their theater and make reservations. And then I'm also going to be coming back to Albuquerque on Saturday and performing Saturday night and Sunday afternoon for a matinee at the Cell Theater with Fusion Theater.
And do we need to get tickets in advance? Or?
You can go to the Cell Theater and you can buy tickets online from them. And this theater in Santa Fe, you actually need to call. It's old school. You need to call and make reservations.
Oh, really?
And it's $18 at the door, general admission, and $15
We have the website for your performance at the Cell Theater here in town.
Right.
We're right up there, and you can go online and get those. And the story goes on.
It goes on.
About your childhood, your travels. I understand your mother is quite part of the show. Is that right?
Yes, she is.
And does your mom? What is your mom's reaction to this?
Well, she saw a DVD of it up in Seattle, and she gave me permission to bring it. So I was like, okay. And there were a couple things where she's like, you can't say that. So I'm changing some things, but it's all my perspective and really fun. I mean, I grew up in a kind of crazy house but we all have a great sense of humor. So I'm excited for a lot of my family's never seen me perform. So it will be really fun to have them do that. And she's fine. She's fine. She didn't want me to do one thing, and then I begged her, and she relented and said, "Okay, you can keep that in." So. Keeping it in.
What was her first reaction when you first started doing this? Was she more like, I don't know?
She's like, I don't think we're that interesting.
No.
I don't know why you feel like you need to. And then she's like, that never happened. You girls just make that up. And it's like, no, you weren't home.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, you were out having dinner, that happened. So, but I think she finds it funny that people think it's funny, because to her it was just our household and,
It's so interesting how members of the same family or siblings can have a different experience growing up than you had. And everybody has their own observation and story or version of how growing up in the house went.
Yeah.
Right, and that was one thing I thought my youngest sister lives in Seattle, so she's seen the show a couple times, and she's actually flying in tomorrow to see it, because she wants to see everyone else's reaction. And I thought, I'm going to get a bunch of, no, that didn't happen exactly like that, or that's not how I remember it. But it didn't. They were like, no, that's totally what I remember.
Sure.
So I was surprised that I was like, oh, okay, good, because that's how I remember it. And it's mainly about me and my perspective. So I'm not, picking on anyone in particular in my family.
Yeah.
But my mother kind of helps me frame it.
And that's good that they're supportive.
They are. They are extremely supportive, yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, this
Scared.
is great. Scared, apprehensive, but supportive.
What's she going to say?
Yeah.
That's what makes comedy so great. What's going to come out of her mouth next?
And that's why I love the improv of it, too, because, who knows? I think Thursday night's going to be an interesting night, because I've got family flying in for it. And so it may be a different show on Thursday, because I know they're going to be laughing in places but no one else is. So that's going to be kind of fun to play
One
with.
more fast question for you. Do you when your family members are in the audience, do you look at them? Can you?
Yeah, I do. I usually, it's hard to see. It depends on the theater space and if you can actually see into the audience. But when Julie was in Seattle, I couldn't remember the name of something that my grandfather made, and I'm like, what do they call it? And she yelled out from the audience. She's like, potholders. I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, that's number 5.
Great to see you. Thank you for
thank
coming
you
and
so
sharing.
much, Jennifer.
We want to thank Albuquerque Arts and Entertainment Magazine for bringing us this segment and our guest. You can have Albuquerque Arts Magazine delivered to your inbox each month. just go ahead and go online at abqarts.com and subscribe. There you go. We'll be back with more on the Morning Brew after this.